All right, so today I'm going to be discussing what if you don't have record of your overtime hours, but you did work overtime and now your employer does not want to pay you for overtime. So this is a very common occurrence. I've handled many cases like this. So, I'll give an example of these guys that are represented working in a Chinese restaurant, and they were just, the owners were just slaving them, like just many, many hours a day. They were paying them in cash. There was pretty much nothing recorded. One of the defenses that they presented at trial, this case actually did go to trial and into collections. It was a whole mess of a case. One of the defenses that they presented was that the guys didn't even work for them. So what happens in these kinds of situations when there's absolutely just no record of any hours, or perhaps that they're giving you a paycheck but they're not including all the hours, or maybe your salary, and the employer is having you work overtime. I've seen this in a lot of, executive assistant jobs. So they try and say you're non-exempt, but then they just have you do like tedious labor, working on weekends, answering phone calls at night, super early in the morning, driving out. They're just having you work around the clock. So what do you do in this kind of situation if you want to make a claim for overtime? Basically, it boils down to this: witness testimony. So you're going to be your own witness, obviously, but do you have other witnesses? Maybe friends saw you, maybe ex-coworkers saw you working all these hours, maybe family even saw you working, for so long, weekends and nights, or, like your own immediate family, or just friends that you have just saw you just on the phone all the time, getting up early to go to work, getting home late at night, or you're just on your computer because your boss is demanding stuff for you to do the next day, or to be completed the next day. So that's basically what it would go on. If you can testify, if you can get other witnesses to testify for you, then that's going to be really helpful to help your case. A lot of the times these employers, they want to settle very quickly because they want to not get hit with a huge attorney's fees bill, both on their end and on your end. In overtime lawsuits in California, the employees is generally entitled to attorney's fees. So it's a very heavy blow against them if they don't settle very quickly. A lot of times also, when you leave a job, they try and get you to sign paperwork. So you absolutely should not sign any type of paperwork without having an attorney sign it, because you may be releasing all these overtime hours that you would already be entitled to. So anything that they want you to sign, get an attorney to look at it, even if it's just a quick review. Don't be pressured to sign anything. And then you could keep track of your hours on your own, or even right when you leave the job, and then you're looking into getting an attorney for an overtime case. You could even jot down, or just call up an attorney and have them draft for their own notes, just all the overtime hours that you worked, and just try and recall everything that you ever worked, so that you can go and negotiate with the employer how much overtime you're actually entitled to. And there's many, many, many cases like this in California. Unfortunately, employers are still notorious for making their employees work overtime. They want to just grind these employees, and never will think that an employee will actually make a demand against them, let alone sue them. But that is something that employers should not be doing. They definitely should not be working their employees with overtime without paying them an overtime rate, especially in this day and age. Overtime lawsuits it's a long-standing history in California, so there's really no reason for employers to be withholding their overtime sums. They're relatively, they can be difficult cases to manage, but it's definitely worth looking into whether you want to pursue it. You potentially would be leaving a lot of money on the table, and the money that you would otherwise be entitled to. So at least get an attorney perspective to take a look at it, see what's going on. Overtime is generally over 8 hours a day or over 40 hours a week, whichever is more. So let's say, you're working 6 8-hour days, which would be 48 hours, or let's say you're working 60 hours, the 60 hours would carry more weight. It's really, it would be 20 overtime hours rather than 8 overtime hours. So you definitely want to have a competent overtime attorney look at it, see what's going on, see what kind of duties you're doing, to see whether you or not you are entitled to overtime to begin with. I have another video coming out where it talks about non-exempt versus exempt employees. Just because an employer says you're exempt, or just because an employer says that you're salaried, doesn't necessarily mean that you're not entitled to overtime. So you should definitely get some competent attorney to take a look, especially if you're looking to make a claim for any overtime wages, non-payment of wages, inaccurate wage statements, all sorts of technical violations that the employer may engage in. So definitely worth looking into. And that's it. Hope this was helpful. Let me know any questions you guys have, and I'll talk to you soon.